Okay, so one of the things that I see people get the most confused over is the cover element within the first 5 C's. And remember that your first line of defense with cover is the clothes on your back that you're wearing, depending on the seasonality and weather changes possible where you're going. So always having some type of outerwear in your pack that's spare, like some kind of a windshield or water resistant material like this raincoat, is always going to be a good bet for you, and it's going to allow you to be much more comfortable if the weather changes quickly. But it can also be something that you could wear at night if you had to give you extra warmth or an extra layer of protection. And you can roll a pretty good heavy duty raincoat up pretty small, about the size of a water bottle. All right? So that's the first thing to remember. The next thing to think about is some multifunctional emergency cover type gear that I can easily adapt to different scenarios. And for that, I would choose probably a trash bag or a drum liner, a heavy duty 3mm 55 gallon, and an emergency space blanket that's reflective on one side. Now, the smart money would be to have this in orange and already have 3 big black X's and duct tape on the back, so that if it's an emergency, as soon as I set this up, it becomes a signaling device. That's personal preference. That doesn't take up hardly any room, and I lay that in the back of that rucksack. This can also be used as rain gear, a flotation device. This can be wrapped around you to trap body heat if needs be. It can be used as a ground pad or a ground mat. This can be stuffed with leaves and things like that to make a mattress to get you off the ground if you don't have some type of suspension system like a hammock. All those things can be done with these 2 simple items. Now, beyond that, I would say that you should carry some type of lightweight shelter with you that enables you to get out of the elements very, very quickly. And this is a 6x8 nylon tarp. Now, is this a tarp that I would carry with me if I were going on a camping trip? No, it's not. I would choose something like oilcloth or canvas that's going to be long lasting and heavy duty for a long-term hunting camp. But for emergency purposes, this tarp is probably 7 years old. This was the first prototype of the Pathfinder tarp made by Oware Tarps, and it has done me and served me very well for the past 5 to 7 years, somewhere in that neighborhood. Again, this is a 7x7 tarp, excuse me. So it's large enough to cover me because I'm only 5'8". If you are 6 foot tall or more, you may want an 8x8 tarp. But these still nylon type tarps don't weigh a whole lot for what they do for you as far as getting you out of weather. And here in Ohio, this time of year, we have to worry about heavy duty rain. And something like this that's large enough to get you out of that rain is important. Now, again, seasonality dictates. I have a military issue surplus bug net here. These are very cheap to buy, very inexpensive and lightweight, but they can be used for lots and lots of things. It makes a pillow every day. And a pillow at night is an underrated piece of gear. I promise you that, for a good night's sleep. So this makes a great pillow whether you're on the ground or in a hammock. Because it's a net, it also can be used in an emergency for fishing. It's a good minnow seine. It's not going to be a gill net, but it's a great seine for seining minnows and things like that if the need arises. But if you are in an environment where you have lots of bugs, this thing will pay huge dividends for you. I can promise you that. So having this versatility of this net, whether it's for fishing, whether it's for a pillow, or whether it's for keeping the bugs off of you at night, or just draping over you while you're sitting by a tree to keep the mosquitoes off, a net is the way to go for that. Let's talk about stakes for just a minute. I carry plastic stakes. Why do I waste my time carrying stakes when stakes are easy to make? Because if this is an unplanned emergency camping trip, I don't want to make stakes. They don't weigh very much. I can carry 6 or 8 of these stakes, and they take up hardly any room and weigh hardly anything, and I can stuff them in a bag with a few pieces of paracord for ridge lines and things like that, not have a great big giant heavy package, but something that will do me quickly in an emergency, and that's what's important to understand. Now, let's talk about this hammock for just a minute that I was laying in at the beginning of the video. All right, so let's talk about this hammock. This is a Hammock Jungle Nylon M1966 without canopy. Got a US stamp right here on the inside. So this is a Vietnam era jungle hammock. And the material that this is made out of is a nylon that's probably as thick as most backpacks are made out of nowadays. This is not that sil nylon parachute type material that you see most hammocks made out of. It's much heavier duty than that. It's got a nice seam all the way down both sides of it, and then again it's got tubes on the ends that we'll show you here in just a minute. But this is a really heavy duty hammock, and it weighs almost nothing. But it also gives you an extra ground sheet if you need it. So it's a multifunctional piece of kit, and it doesn't weigh hardly anything. The advantage to a hammock cannot be overstated. Now, I really don't think that the advantages of a simple hammock like this can be overstated in a video, because depending on the terrain and the environment that you're in, a hammock can get you up off the ground. So there's lots of things that you need to think about when you're setting up or picking a campsite for the night. But a lot of those things can be dealt with simply by suspending yourself off the ground. And I noticed, I put a post about this up in the Learning Center this morning, and John McCann made a very good point about that exact subject, that with a hammock, I don't have to worry too much about drainage. I'm not going to have water rolling into my tent because I'm going to be off the ground. It's very simple to find a couple of trees that are 10, 15 feet apart to string this hammock between. And if I had to, I could even string this thing across a creek if needs be, or the emergency dictated, because I'm not going to be sleeping on the ground. And something like this one, which is very small in comparison to the hammock today, this is not a giant hammock, okay? So you're going to sleep in this about like this. This is not a side sleep, diagonal lay type hammock. It's just going to be an emergency hammock, but again, it doesn't weigh even near as much as the smallest hammock that you can buy on the market today. This thing weighs less than that for sure. And it's heavier material, so it's a little bit more multifunctional. I've got this suspended with 2 pieces of paracord and 2 pieces of mule tape. Again, something that doesn't weigh hardly anything. That's probably in my kit anyway, under the cordage criteria that I carry with me. Now, all I've done for suspension on this jungle hammock is I've ran the line through the sleeve, and it's got 2 webbing loops right here on the outside that you can also run that line through, and then it just gathers up on the end. You could also put the sleeve on the side of this thing's big enough, you could put a couple stays in there if you wanted to, and then tie your ropes off to the stays and to these loops as well. But I just put this up like a normal hammock, and then I've just taken a piece of paracord, 1 length of paracord, and ran it around this thing and put a fisherman's knot in it to hold it into a loop, and then I just clove hitched that thing through a simple piece of mule tape. This is like 1,800 pound tensile strength, this mule tape, and it weighs virtually nothing. So I've got 2 of these 20-foot long pieces of mule tape and 2 10, 12-foot pieces of paracord that just fold up into this hammock, and that's plenty of suspension for this thing. And I will guarantee you, for all said and done, this thing probably weighs 5 or 6 ounces or less maybe. Alright, so again, real quick on the suspension system. I want to show you how simple this really is. All I've done is I've taken 1 piece of paracord and I've ran it through this sleeve and tied a fisherman's knot in it. So I've got a loop there of paracord, and I cinched it tight just like that. Then I just stepped off a little ways from it and I put a slip knot in it just like that, with another slip knot right behind it as a stop knot so that it's easily adjustable. Now when I pull this up here, it's stopped and it can't go anywhere. That is my suspension loop on the hammock itself, just like that. Then I just took that piece of mule tape, divided it in half, put it through the loop, and made a clove hitch, or it made a lark's head knot there, just like that. A reef knot, a square knot, whatever you want to call that, depending on where you learned your knots, just like that. That is the suspension system for this hammock. It's very, very simple. It's very, very easy. It's very effective. And then I can adjust my hang angle from there. And all of this stuff is pretty much slip knots, so it all comes out very, very easily. And as well as the fisherman's knot, because all I have to do is pull the tails and everything comes loose. And I can take that apart too if I wish to do so, or I can just leave this in the hammock. And that's usually what I do, is just leave this stuff in the hammock like it is. All right, so when it's all said and done, this is the tarp and the hammock and the lines, all in this package. And I just roll this up, just like this. And again, like I said, this entire package is smaller than a water bottle when you're done. And weighs very, very little. Get the air out of that tarp. There you go. So that's just about the same size. If I had to guess, is a 32-ounce water bottle. Let me grab one and put it over here and we'll find out. A little bit longer than a 32-ounce bottle, but about the same diameter. Pretty close. Okay, so now let's talk about the container element of our kit. Again, we're not planning to be out there camping. If we were, we would probably have a bush pot, maybe some type of a skillet or a folding skillet, maybe even a Boy Scout cook set, something like that, depending on what we were planning on doing and how long we were going to stay. But for something in our pack, for an emergency pack, a day pack that we're carrying, we really need nothing more than a water bottle and nesting cup. That will allow us to do anything that we need to do in an overnight, even maybe more than one night, 2 or 3, in an emergency if we had to wait for rescue. But we can boil our water in this and disinfect our water in this. We can cook in this if we have brought something with us for food. Most likely what we're going to have is not going to require cooking anyway if it's in our day pack. It's going to be something like beef jerky or possibly some type of a trail mix or a gorp. But if we chose to bring something in there for the day because we maybe plan to stop and cook something, we might have some bannock or some type of a hot mix of some kind. That's easy enough to mix and cook in just a regular cup. The advantage to having the cup is it allows me to, 1, boil and dump if I need to disinfect my water, but number 2, it gives me a chamber that I can create to make charred material in an emergency as well, and that's important. But again, this is also part of my first aid kit because it is a hot-cold compress, depending on how I use it. It's rapid rewarming from the inside if I'm drinking warm liquid. It's irrigation for a cut or a wound if I hold it up in the air and dump the water down on top of the wound or cut. I can make medicine in this if I have knowledge of the local plants. So it gives me a very useful item, but it needs to be made out of, again, this is the important part, not the brand or type. It needs to be made out of some type of metal that can be placed into the fire, as well as the nesting cup. You can use aluminum for that, although aluminum is not going to be as durable as stainless steel. You can use titanium, but titanium tends to warp in open flame if there's no liquid inside the cup. So you have to be careful of that. Stainless steel is about the most durable thing that I've found to use, and that's why I chose to make the Pathfinder bottle and cup set out of stainless steel and not titanium. So again, the brand doesn't really matter. It just matters that you have a single-walled stainless steel container and a nesting cup. If you're going to be in an area where you have lack of water or it's going to be very hot, maybe you choose to carry 2. I'd much rather carry 2 smaller bottles that I can equalize the weight on my backpack than to carry 1 large bottle and have all of that weight in one spot on my backpack. That's just my mentality as far as that goes with weight distribution, carrying water. Well, guys, I really appreciate you joining me today for this segment in our short series on the evolution of the 10-piece kit. I appreciate your views. I appreciate your support. I thank you for everything you do for our school, for our family, and for our business, for all of our sponsors, instructors, affiliates, and friends, and I'll be back with another video as soon as I can. Thanks, guys.